Hi, it's Grave Girls. I'm Danielle.
I'm Charli.
And it's our show. We're going to do our show. So, on today's episode, we are making a song. We're talking about how to make a song.
Mm-hmm. Not making one. We're talking about
it.
Well, I guess the first question is, who are you? Tell me how to make a song.
Well, so I've written and recorded and produced 12 of my own albums over the last while. And several of them have been pretty successful. I also own and run a recording studio where I have recorded and worked on over 100 albums. And a lot of these are ranging from anything from like emotional hardcore to like intense music to like bluegrass and flute songs. I've done all sorts of in between. A lot of my job is to provide suggestions and feedback to the artists and make sure they get the best thing that they can out of their experience. And I like to think I do a good job of it. I've been in some magazines, I've talked to some people, the stuff.
The stuff you do.
See, I guess that's it, right?
I mean, that's pretty credentially. I have been a big fan ever since I met you. But legitimately, like the first time we rode to a show together, she's like, "Oh, I'm gonna play you some music I made." I was like, "Wow, okay," and it just kept getting better.
Well, you've heard Grave Girls, I'm sure, by this point, and if you haven't, you should like and subscribe.
I don't know how you got here, but I'm glad you are. At least you should listen to our music.
Yeah, facts. There's really like a huge question right off the bat with making a song, and it's, do I do the lyrics or the music first? And it's really up to you. It depends on what kind of artist you are, but it will tell you what kind of artist you are. If you're an artist who primarily works in the format of music, you will make the music first. If you're an artist who primarily is a singer or a songwriter in terms of like solo music, there is a chance that you might make the lyrics first, but it's still pretty uncommon overall. I mean, sound off in the comments, tell us which one you do. Do you make the music first or do you make the lyrics first? So typically as far as art goes, I am a music first artist, and what I like to do is I find just like a point of inspiration or a point of like contention that I'd like to either address, or something that I think I could try a little better, or something that might just simply be like fun for me and like amusing as an artist. Because over the years of working with art takes time, and the thing about it is you will come to terms with who you are as an artist eventually, because you will learn it like a language. You go from being, an infant, and you learn to crawl, and then you learn to scamper around, and then you learn to walk, and then next thing you know, you're like giving a speech about how to make a song. I don't always, but I'll often see the finished thing before I start making it. And I'll make songs with drum sequencers. I'll start with the bass. I'll start with guitar. Oftentimes for me, my primary medium of playing, like as a musician, is on guitar. So I will often start with guitar. I don't always start with guitar. It just ends up being what I usually do, unless it's like drums or piano or random mandolin tunings or random ukulele tunings, or did I say bass, banjo? We use a lot of different things in Grave Girls, so yeah. And then, like, for example, like our song Beat 42. So with a song like Beat 42, I was basing it off of the jam aspect of creating, which was just kind of like to meander some stuff and just like see what comes out of it. I learned first as a musician to be jamming before I learned how to write music on my own, and it really helped me like jamming is one good way to learn how to write songs, especially if you're playing in a group. If you're playing in a group, jamming is definitely a good way to come up with music, because oftentimes you'll be playing and you'll get to a point where you're like, okay, that's where I want to start the track. That's where I want the things to pop off at, or that sort of thing. But then other times, you know, like you're like, oh, hey, Charlie mentioned the Grateful Dead and I want to impress my girlfriend by making a jammier song, which is how Beat 42 came about. And so I had this really sick, like, relaxing drum beat that I just added, like, mandolin, then 2 different keyboards, and, you know, eventually the other instruments and all that, and violin that Charlie played. Then you've got other songs like Worm Rider, where I was literally just like messing around on a riff, being like, hey, I want to come up with something badass. And then you mess around with it. I didn't think anything about it for like a year, maybe 2 years almost. And then I come back to this riff and I'm like, holy shit, I like that a lot. I could definitely do something with that. And that's how we developed Worm Rider, which Worm Rider's interesting because the guitar tone is just disgusting. The thing about it is it's one track. It's like there's like one octave down, then 2 octaves down on the guitar, and there's not actually bass on that. There's not a bass guitar on that song. It's just an electric guitar and drums and a little bit of keys. There's a backup effect we call Operator that we use out of Ableton. It's just an effect that I use for a keyboard tone. It's like my main. Currently, it's my main like bassy keyboard tone that I use for Grave Crawls. So, let's say you've got an idea, and you're developing your song. The next thing you want to do is you want to think about how the song is going to be arranged. And arrangement has to do with, you know, which instruments are being played, what kind of musicians are present. And how the track will be organized. For example, like, should the drums drop out in the verse? Should the drums drop out in the bridge? Should they come back stronger or like do a crescendo? As a band leader or as a songwriter, it behooves oneself to learn terms. And, you know, I mean, people are all the time like, oh, it's just rock and roll, it's just punk rock. And it's like, sure, you can copy other people, that's true. You can copy other people. But to come up with your own stuff, you have to do a lot of exploratory work. You do. Exploratory work involves like finding things you're interested in and just being like, ooh, what's that? What's that? What's that? You know what I mean.
I do.
You know exactly what I mean. Because, you know, Charlie writes as well. And sometimes it's just like a meandering, happy accident. And that's great. And other times it's like an intentional, like, I'm going to go after this for a second and do a thing. And other times it's like you base it off another song and come up with a different thing. As far as arrangement goes, you got to think of them in terms of layers, like, because that's how audio actually often works. Audio and visual often work in layers. And in audio we call them tracks or channel strips sometimes.
In visuals, we just call it layers.
Yeah. Yeah, visual artists are so literal, whereas music is like this pseudo weirdo thing that you have to like sit here and, you know, perform weird magical rites about it and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then the visual part is like showing off that aspect.
Well, now I was talking to a painting I was painting the other day, so I mean, you know, visual arts get weird too.
They do. I'm not saying they don't get weird. I'm saying like there's a certain literalism of like seeing things. Like I have to see it to believe it. You don't say I have to hear it to believe it usually, because usually when you hear things, it's not true. I heard. Well, that's not true. Versus I saw this. That's literal to us. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that music has been around. You know, like what, like 30 to 100,000 years. And by the way, I have an anthropology degree. Versus like visual, ocular sense, and language, which has been around for millions of years, quite literally. Mm-hmm. So there's that. So we're more used to looking at things and knowing them as true rather than hearing things and being able to tell whether or not they're false.
It's true.
But, you know, as an artist in music, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was, you know, you're a magician. Imagine yourself as a magician, like performing a trick. You need to legitimately conceal certain things about it or obscure certain things about it, or like you don't, like a lot of artists, they work inside this framework where they're not necessarily showing all the work, they're just showing the results. And that's something that can be very exciting to us, and it's like very like, it's like hot girl shit, you know what I mean? It's just like, it's just good on the surface. And that's enough to get in the door, and you know, you develop different types of songs. Sometimes, you know, people will ask you, are you going for a more accessible? Are you trying to please everyone and be accessible, or are you writing for yourself? And I would say that it's a song to song thing, and sometimes it's riff to riff. Sometimes you write riffs for other people. You're like, oh, you know, Charlie would love this. And other times you write them for yourselves, and there's nothing wrong with that. I think that a lot of people blame their problems on shit they don't understand. I think that people blame their problems on shit they don't understand.
I think
like
that's true.
People,
across the board.
Across the board. People blame autotune because they don't understand it. People blame, you know, pop music because they don't understand the conventions of pop music and what comes from it. People blame bass music because they don't get what the culture's about. And so on and so forth. That's a big one.
I remember what you'd said.
What?
When inspiration hits, write it down.
Oh, yeah. When inspiration hits. That's hilariously ironic. I thought you would write it down.
I forgot.
So when inspiration hits, write it down. Absolutely. And also, creativity does not wait. Creativity will not wait for your art. You need to strike while the iron's hot, so they say. You know, you don't always have your chance open to you. Don't sleep on it. Do it then. And that's how you get art created. But as far as making music, that's a whole different story. So one thing about making music is, before you interrupted me, I was on a tangent that was really good, and I can't remember. Serve the song, not the artist. Yeah, serve the song, not the artist. That's super important. Just the idea that ego gets in the way. And to serve the song means that you are avoiding being particular and super important about what you play as a musician, and instead you are focusing on the overall song quality, which is not serving someone else. You can do it for your own reasons. And even if it is serving someone else, again, honey, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Just seek to understand. Period. And if you find that offensive, then you're in the wrong club. Period. And you're watching the wrong video, so turn it off. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, like and subscribe if you're still here at this point. I already said that. Okay, so...
But if you're still here, you're awesome.
So, speaking of serving the art, not the artist... I would not really consider, as a song creator and a producer who gets paid money, I just do. I try really hard, and I think a lot about it, and I think more than most people about art. Or other people are writing music and bringing it to me and saying, how do I turn this into a song that people are going to want to listen to on the internet and stuff. And so that's what we create together, and I have the experience and wherewithal to make that happen. Yeah, I don't consider myself, like, a musician is a certain type of person. A musician is about repetition. A musician is about getting it perfect and knowing your parts. And those people are very specialized and deserving of the careers that they have. The other side of that is, if you want to do it all, you have to, like, go outside of the box of being a musician. And sometimes people get uncomfortable with that, or they think that it's a cop-out, or like you're taking from stuff, and it's like everything you do, say, make, and think has influence. So, you know, you can't be so up your own butt that you can't, like, have a good time with it. And some people get stuck in this like almost anal retentive music phase where everything is like, oh, well, if it's not perfect, I don't like it. And that's a very anal retentive, like infantile thing to think. It just is. It's not the whole story. Can I tell the story about the flute player? Okay. So imagine we're in like feudal Japan or something cool. You know, there was a flute player making these amazing flutes, world-renowned flutes. People would come from across, they would walk hundreds of miles for these flutes. A man comes to him, he says, "Flute maker, I've been practicing my instrument 20 years. I think I'm ready for one of your flutes." So the flute maker says, "Indeed you are," and makes this man a flute. The flute maker presents it to the man and says, "Why don't you play it for us?" The man begins to play. He plays beautifully. He plays a perfect rendition of a song that he knows the flute player likes. And it kind of falls flat. And come back to me when you actually know how to play. The man is very offended, to the point that he goes home angry. He gets in an argument with his girlfriend. Some things are said that they shouldn't be said. Long story short, 2 weeks later, they've been broken up, and it's her apartment, so he's out on the street with his dog. Then, you know, his dog gets sick and dies or something. I'm sorry, this is a sad story now, but just wait. So he goes for several years. He ends up being like kind of homeless and like traveling a little bit, and he sees a lot of things. He meets a lot of people. He's in a lot of dangerous situations. He has to endure the wind and the rain of this life. And, you know, let's make a long story short here. When he comes back one day, 10 years later, he comes back to the flute player. And the flute player says, "Where's the flute I gave you?" And he says, "I lost it almost immediately in a gambling game because I had to make money to feed myself." And the flute player says, "Well, did you win?" And he says, "I did not." And the flute player scratches his chin and is like, "Well, here, let me set you up with this flute." And he pulls a stock flute, one of his stock flutes off the shelf, and hands it to the man. And he says, "Here, play the piece that I first told you to play." And of course the man remembers it very well. It technically ruined his life to have played this song for the flute player. And so the man takes out the flute and he's overcome with emotion, and he cries and weeps openly in front of the flute player. And then he plays the song. It takes him a minute to get his hands back to the memory of doing it, and the flute player gives him plenty of patience and time, and the man plays the part, he plays the piece, he plays the song, and the flute player says, "Now you understand what it really takes to be an artist." You know? And what it comes down to is that we have to explore and we have to experience. And without exploring and that experience, you don't have a lot to say in art at all. And if you don't have anything to say in art, then put down the guitar and go skateboard or something. If you don't have anything to say with music, because music is inherently political. It is what it is. It is inherently saying something, no matter what you want to do about it. The flute player was saying the wrong thing originally. He had learned in a classroom. He had, and there's nothing wrong with learning in class or learning via proxy, you know. He was missing a part of the study of what it takes to be an artist, because he had only learned what it takes to be a musician. And there is a difference. There is definitely a difference. If you've been in this industry a long time, you know that there is a difference. And so as far as making a song, we're going to have to do a part 2, aren't we?
Oh, I mean...
We're doing a part 2 on this, I guess, because we've got so much to say. We haven't even gotten into the part. So we got to arranging, and then we started doing some advice. And so we got through arrangement, and next time we talk, we're going to talk about performance of recording and, you know, how to record music, how to develop a production style, and how to create a piece of art that people are going to want to hear, ideally.
Fun.
Yeah, so we'll give you a part 2 next time on Heights Grave Girls.
And that's next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.